Welcome back to another video. In this one, we're going to be talking about relegation. 3 teams now confirmed to the Championship: Southampton, Leeds and Leicester. An escape on the final day for Everton. We're going to be looking at the reality of relegation. What does it mean for these teams? We're going to be looking at the bounce back potential for these teams, bounce backability, as Soccer AM used to say. Now, there is a trend with these teams when I go through them, lack of decent recruitment or just getting recruitment wrong. I think Southampton, they tried to get in Championship players, so the best of the Championship, and then sell them on that way. They used to get the best out of the Eredivisie or something like that, or from Scotland, and they changed their approach in recent years, and they're bringing in players which just have very little Premier League experience, whether that's from the Man City under-21s or from Blackburn or whatever, bringing in Armstrong. They've got Shea Adams as well up top. They are 2 Championship strikers, essentially. They've not been able to do it in the Premier League. I'm sure they've still got plenty of potential. Armstrong, possibly. They're not young players anymore. As we will see in the bounce back ability section, I do think that whilst it's a hindrance in the Premier League that they haven't got any experience, some of these players in the squad, if they can keep hold of them for Southampton, I think that they're going to do very, very well in the Championship. Shea Adams and Armstrong up top, if they can bring in someone else. The striker they signed from Genk as well looks decent, and in the Championship he's probably going to score goals. He wasn't really given a chance in the Premier League. On to Leeds, and you could ask the same question, couldn't you, regarding the manager sacking. Was it right to sack Jesse Marsch? Results weren't necessarily there, but if you look at the actual goals they were conceding, they rarely conceded more than 2 goals under Jesse Marsch. I think all Leeds managers this season have been unlucky with injuries and lack of performing strikers. They've not got the worst squad to go down into the Championship. I think if you look at all of these squads and you look at the players that might be picked, cherry-picked by Premier League teams, I think Leeds are probably bottom of that list for me, because Leicester's team is going to get picked apart. And Southampton have got some really exciting youngsters that have showed promise for sure this season. The guys that they brought in from Man City look like very good players. They've obviously got players like James Ward-Prowse, Livramento, who are going to be Kyle Walker-Peters. These are not going to be playing in the Championship, nor should they, because they have proven, especially James Ward-Prowse. I mean, he could go to any team, to be honest. I think even Man City, he would not look out of place. I'm not saying he will. But I believe there's no sort of cap to where he can go and play, because he's a very classy player, and I think he's a player that would take his own game to the next level if he's playing with better players around him. He's a tidy player, so if you put him in that City team, again, I'm not saying he's going to go to City, but he wouldn't look out of place. Yeah, so it's difficult to say, isn't it, whether Jesse Marsch would have guided this Leeds team to safety. Sam Allardyce had 4 games to try and do it. But the problem with Leeds, as I was alluding to before, is they can't score enough goals, and they went through that period under Gracia. That was the moment, I think. Maybe if they'd appointed Sam Allardyce then. They sold Rafinha, didn't they, and Calvin Phillips, and I don't think they've replaced them that well. I do think Jesse Marsch got more out of certain types of players in that squad, probably the players that were on the bench, his players, right? They sort of just got put on the bench under Sam Allardyce. He brought them on when they needed goals. They signed a £35 million striker in January who just hasn't featured, which is just a waste of money, isn't it? Because now they're a Championship team. £35 million in January. What is your priorities? I mean, if you're spending that kind of money, Danny Ings went for £15 million. And, of course, on to Leicester, no longer a Premier League team. They won the Premier League in 2016, the great escape themselves before that, the season before that. And I fear for Leicester the most, I'll be honest, because you look through the team, James Justin, Ndidi, Maddison, Johnny Evans potentially retiring. Yuri Tielemans is off. Harvey Barnes would be stupid to not leave because, again, just like James Ward-Prowse, Harvey Barnes, I do think this could go to any club. He has shown in a really poor team this season what he can do, and he takes games and moments by the scruff of the neck, just like his goal yesterday. Little quick 1-2, he's off, he's gone. And in a matter of seconds, it's in the back of the net. That inside forward position on the left is a difficult position to fill as well. I mean, you could see him going to any top club, to be honest. I could see him at Newcastle, could see him at Manchester United, and he's good enough. He was close to the England team before he got that injury. He's come back this season, 13 goals, I think, in the Premier League, in a season where Leicester have performed as they have, where there's been a World Cup, where he's been injured. is a great return, and he scores very good goals as well. So yeah, again, just like with Ward-Prowse, I think we're going to see Harvey Barnes at a top 6 club next summer. And Soyuncu and Pereira as well will probably leave. And you know, just to echo the thoughts of the other clubs that I had, recruitment's been poor. They've not replaced key players like Kasper Schmeichel when they've left. They've not replaced Jamie Vardy. They brought in Iheanacho and Daka to potentially do that over the years. And I think there wasn't a willingness at Leicester to say these players aren't really working. And you could see that Iheanacho wasn't really working for the past few years. It works a little bit sometimes. He has a moment of class, but in terms of consistency and what he brings to the team, he's nowhere near Jamie Vardy. This guy, when he plays and when he's fit and when we play a certain way, he scores goals. That's what you get from Jamie Vardy. And he's getting older now, Vardy, so you have to find that replacement. You have to find that replacement in performance, in consistency. So what is the reality of relegation for these teams? I've just mentioned it briefly for Leicester. It's, those players, if they don't replace them, and if they don't spend that money wisely, there's no right for them to bounce back, because they're going to have to build a new team. They've not even got a manager. Dean Smith was an interim manager. It's a really scary summer. It's a really pivotal summer for Leicester City, and you can imagine a world where they don't bounce back straight away, because it's hard. We'll see at the end of the video the teams that are in the Championship this season, the next season, sorry. It's not going to be an easy. It's never an easy task, and it just shows how well Burnley did and Sheffield United this year, because those point tallies, not to be sniffed at in the Championship. It's such a competitive league, and for Leeds, the reality is that they understand, and especially the fans do more than most, that there's no God-given right to be in the Premier League, and you can fall out at any time, and it might be 20, 30 years until you're back in it. This is the sort of thing that can happen. Leeds, I think they've got an okay Championship team, and I think they've got players that will be committed to Leeds. They've got some players like Ayling. You could see him go into a lower end Premier League team, but will he? I don't think he will. I think they've got some loyal players there that can stick around and give themselves a really good chance of getting back to the Premier League straight away. And this is the thing with teams that come down. The first season in the Championship is so important. If you don't get back up, you look at Norwich now, they've consistently been a yo-yo team, but this season they've dropped off. It didn't work. And what do they do now? How do they attract players when other teams coming down might be a bit more of an attractive option? But this is English football, and this is why we love it. On the other side of the coin, you've got Luton coming back into the Championship, into the Premier League now. 9 years from non-league to the Premier League. It's a remarkable story. I'm sure Leicester, Leeds and Southampton will be back sooner rather than later. So let's talk about the bounce back potential, bounce back ability, a term coined by Soccer AM back in the day. Soccer AM finished now, of course. So the bounce back ability, firstly, I'll just give my opinion who I think will bounce back. I think Southampton are best suited to bounce back to the Premier League first time, because of what I said before about their strategy, how it's adapted, how they've been focusing on Championship players or players that have not played any football ever professionally, getting players from under 23 squads and under 21 squads and stuff, has kind of worked. And I think that would have been a great system in the Championship, because it's kind of like bringing in loan players, except you're buying them permanently, so you've captured that potential. I give Southampton the best chance of bouncing back because they've got a mixed squad. They've got those young players with high potential, but they've also got some older players that probably going to just want to stay. I know Theo Walcott's leaving, but they've got some other players that have played in the Championship before. They've got that experience, and they've done well in the Championship as well. Players like Armstrong and Adams, you can see them getting 15, 20 goals next season. They are going to lose James Ward-Prowse, and there might be a relegation release clause in his contract, in many of these contracts, where he's available for 25 million or something. And even that, that can go far in the Championship, bringing in players. They've got a good scouting system, Southampton, so they could dip into the European market again. They might change that philosophy now that they're in the Championship, but I do believe they will bounce straight back. They've also got Russell Martin coming in as the manager as well, plays a great brand of football, which will suit Southampton. And as we've seen, with Burnley, it can It can be very effective, a very good brand of football in the Championship. Swansea ended the season really well as well under Russell Martin. They'll be disappointed to lose him, but it's obviously a good job for him. Bigger budget, better players, Premier League players that are coming down, but more pressure for him. The expectation will be to bounce straight back. So Leicester City, what is their bounce back ability? I'm going to predict that they will be in a playoff race next season. I don't think they've got what it takes right now, but they're going to lose so many players. They're going to lose 6, 7, 8 players that are first team players that they actively have to go out and replace. And then it becomes a whole rebuilding exercise because, as I said before, they've not even got a manager. So they're going to have to find the manager first. Then they're going to have to get the manager in early. If they get a manager in early and they get all these deals done early, then I would maybe revise the prediction, right? But it doesn't feel like the club is in the best place in terms of management at the minute. They're making some strange decisions. I wouldn't have sacked Brendan Rodgers. In the same way I wouldn't have sacked Sean Dyche if I was Burnley when they went down. Because this guy's taken you so far. Do you really not believe he can keep you up? I mean, this is Brendan Rodgers. He won the FA Cup for Leicester. He's a good coach, and I think he deserved the chance to keep him up. And I think if you'd have kept him, and I think the same about Hasenhüttl as well. Like if you'd have kept him, I think for Leeds, if they'd have kept Bielsa, potentially they might not have gone down. I know Bielsa was really not into adapting his football at all. But I still think they always got goals under Bielsa, and now they can't score for nothing at the minute with Bamford. So this has been a review of those 3 teams that have been relegated. Where will they finish in the Championship? Do you think they will all bounce back potentially? When you've been in the Premier League for so long, you're not used to Championship football, whereas all these other teams obviously are. Sunderland, Middlesbrough away for Leicester, that's going to be a horrible game. Most of these games are West Brom away. These are not easy games now for Leicester. Once you lose Harvey Barnes, Tielemans, Evans, Maddison, Ndidi, Justin, they are going to need a whole new team and a manager. So do you agree with me that Leicester will not come straight back up? I don't like to say it. I love watching Leicester. I have loved watching Leicester in the Premier League era. We're always an exciting team. When they won it, will be remembered forever. Even the survival, 7 games to go, everyone thought they were dead and buried. They survived and then won the Premier League. Amazing story. Some characters through the times as well. Schmeichel, I think, if they had Kasper Schmeichel, I honestly don't believe they would be relegated. I know it's easy to say now, but he was such a bond between the fans, the coaches, on and off the pitch. He was organising the defence all the time. You could hear him through COVID, the COVID games. He never shuts up. And that, to go from that to Danny Ward, who didn't have any of that kind of presence and obviously not the quality as well of Kasper Schmeichel, I think that was the biggest mistake. And it goes back to the recruitment, doesn't it? Not getting it right, not planning. And that is a trend with all of the teams, all 4 teams, if we include Everton as well. The recruitment and the planning of the club is not good enough. And we're seeing now more than ever that is the most important thing at a club. You can have all the best players not in the world, but you can throw some money at some players and bring them in. But if you've not got a coherent system and everyone pulling in the right direction and proper planning in terms of bringing players in, then you're not going anywhere, to be honest. And you look at Brentford, you look at Brighton, they are just amazing examples. And you look at Southampton a few years ago as well. They were the idols for the Brentfords and the Brightons. They really were, but they changed their plan. They got it wrong. It just sort of went stale. They didn't maybe bring in that next star, that Van Dijk that they once did. They just let it go a bit stale, I think. Didn't refresh in certain areas, especially up top. You need somebody that can get you 15 Premier League goals, or you're going to struggle. We've seen it. You see it with the teams that have gone down. Who's the striker there that's getting them 15, 20 goals this season? Jamie Vardy hasn't done it for Leicester. Patrick Bamford hasn't done it for Leeds. Everton didn't have a striker for most of the season, and they really struggled. And for Southampton, as I said previously, Armstrong and Shea Adams will do very well in the Championship because they are Championship strikers. They will probably get 15, 20 goals in the Championship, but that step up is massive. Let me know who you think will get promoted from the Championship next season. What do you think about this video? Do you like the commentary style? it's easier for me to do, if I'm honest. I just record and just talk about football and then just hit some visuals and whatnot. So yeah, if you've liked it, hit a like, subscribe, all that good stuff, and see you in the next one.